Hi, this is a review of the activity that occurred on November 2nd, 2020 of the orderIT system. On screen is a client application that receives the notifications of trade indications that may be valuable to the person who obviously is monitoring. As you can see, there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 specific stocks that were identified. As you can see that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 were triggered as buy activity, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 were triggered as short sells. That's just indication that the system can handle both identification of short selling and straight buy activity. And again, this is the main client interface. It mainly just shows the activity of the stock via Yahoo Finance, so you can see what's going on. You can see that this stock was identified at 1140, which was around here, and you can see that it ended up down here. So you can see that it actually did follow a downward trend that would indicate that it was a good potential stock for short selling. In general, we can evaluate to see if there's consistency in actually how the stock trades, and this is the evaluation stream for the actual data. As you can see, this trade here came in again 1140, which was the one we were looking at. Came in at 1140, which is up here, and you can see there are different analysis activity that's being done to make performance evaluation determinations of the stock and how it's moving. So you can see that it was moving fairly negatively, I guess, in the morning and until somewhat in the afternoon, where it did pick up a bit and then sort of reversed. But as you can see, the end result was, even though movement was moving somewhat positive, the end result is the stock, though, still was leaning downwards. So the end result is that the actual evaluation was solid, and we'll just go through the rest of the trade activity here. This one is a buy at 1235. You can see that it was tripped high. It did come around and kind of went negative right after the trip, but you can see it just stabilized somewhat, and at the end of the day it came back up. So this is again another positive trade activity, and again it identified as a buy at 1235. We have a sell activity occurring at 1254, which you can see was somewhat, very much pushing downwards. And as you can see, the end result is that the stock, for the most part, was trending downwards across the board. So that was another good identification of a short sell on this particular stock. And another short at 1306. And as you can see, the stock was trending down, even though it looked like it made a little bit of a positive movement in the afternoon. The end result was that it still was down from the day it started. So, starting from that 1306, you can see that it still trended downwards, even though you can see it stabilized at the end of the day, but it was identified at the point where it was moving down and was somewhat still a valid selling activity. 1351 on this stock. Again, you can see it's moving down. It did make a somewhat reverse at the end of the day. And again, like the previous one, this one somewhat stabilized. It did come up at the end of the day, so that's probably a question mark about the actual valuation of the trade activity, but in general, it looks like it could have been at least a safe hold, but that's a conclusion, obviously, that the trader will have to make on evaluation of the activity of the stock. 1405, another sell. You can see again moving down. It did trip a bit and came back up, reversed a bit, but at the end of the day, you can see it did reverse back down, and the end result is at the end of the day, it did come down. So it was a good identification that the stock was trending downwards. And this one is a buy at 1425 at 225. And you can see it was moving upwards. It did kind of like revert at the end of the day, but as you can see, it reverted, but it stabilized, and at the end of the day, you can see it started coming back up. On this stock, it is identifying a buy at 225. Again, it looked like it was a strong upward trend. And the end result is it did come up, and it didn't continue moving up after it identified, but it stabilized, so it seemed to be a solid stock. 1426, 226. Again, the stock was moving upwards, as you can see. It did revert and start to trend downwards, and it seemed that seemed to be the end result. Is at the end of the day, it started trending downwards. But it did look like it was a valid positive identification. It did stabilize and did come down at the end of the day. So that was a little bit of a tricky one, but again, it did not invalidate that the trigger, was positive. And a trade at the end of the day, it looked like it was moving positive, and the result is that it came up and then somewhat stabilized at that point. So overall, this was a good evaluation. This was a presentation of the identification of trade activity, and it looks like all indications showed that they were all solid points in the stocks that were monitored, and the trading points were valid. It doesn't seem like anything was out of the blue, that it was not going in the direction that it was going, and that it was not a strong movement in the direction that it was moving. So anyways, that's activity for November 2nd, 2020.